Ladies and gentlemen, and others who are unspecified, we are here today to mourn the loss of one of the greatest games of our time. It had everything you could ever want in a video game title: fast and addicting gameplay, immediately charming and lovable characters, and breathtaking visuals that'll blow you away. Concord could have been the next big game of this generation if it had just a little more time to cook. But unfortunately, all of that was taken away from us because of those talentless freaks that have infiltrated our gaming industry and call themselves quote-unquote gamers. These so-called gamers have never known in their lives what it's like to put all their blood, sweat, and tears into something that they're passionate about because they hate our representation, they hate our diversity, and they hate our inclusion. So all they can do is tear down and destroy what we have created. They brigaded and co-opted our social spaces in order to push their agendas and their bigoted ideologies down our throats. And unfortunately, they have won this battle. Those right-wingers have forced Firewalk Studios to bend the knee and completely shut down our game because it doesn't conform to their preferences. This is a sad day, not only for the hundreds of people who have spent so much of their time and money on this project, but also for the gaming industry as a whole, because this shows that hatred has power, and with enough of it, you can force these poor developers to do your bidding. And well, all of that harassment worked. Are you happy now? Are you happy that you shut down years and years of hard work just for your stupid agenda? And now lots of hard-working folk are going to lose their jobs because of you, and it is your fault. How does that make you feel, huh? We did it, boys. We actually got Concord shut down. I never thought we would actually be able to get a first-party AAA title to permanently close down 2 weeks after launch. This has got to be the fastest end-of-service speedrun in the history of AAA gaming, and it is beautiful. No longer are gamers openly accepting the mundane generic slop that these AAA Western developers are constantly churning out. No longer are we allowing these game studios to get away with making a product for the quote-unquote modern audience. And no longer are we going to sit quietly while we watch our favorite hobby get worse and worse. Everybody collectively said that this game looked like trash from the day that it was revealed, and yet Firewalk Studios decided to keep pushing forward with Concord because we weren't the target audience. Well, it looks like your target audience was a room full of crickets, because this certainly wasn't made for humans to enjoy, and now your beloved Concord is dead because you made it for absolutely no one. Man, what a time to be a gamer. Rest in peace, Concord, you won't be missed. Now everyone, let's all be mature adults here. We shouldn't point and laugh at other people's downfall just because we don't like what they're doing. We should dance on the graves instead. With the death of Concord, there have been a number of people on the internet that were quite disgruntled with the news, many of them being game journalists who are blaming gamers as a whole for being quote-unquote toxic. So I want to take some time to peruse through some of the responses people had with Concord's shutdown. Now, it was actually pretty difficult finding people who were genuinely upset with Concord's death because a lot of these posts were just from rage baiters who wanted their internet points. But after some digging, I found that there were quite a few people who were actually salty about its end of service. For example, there's one gaming journalist from Wired who wrote this one article titled, "Concord's Death Offers a Bleak Look at Gaming's Future." Okay, interesting title. I don't see how Concord's death makes the future of the gaming industry more bleak, considering how 99.9% of players were not interested in it in the first place. But let's see what this guy has to say. "I was completely devastated. We've never seen a first-party title from Sony get this kind of treatment before. In fact, we've never seen any AAA video game get this kind of treatment, and that's what could make Concord a horrifying canary in the coal mine for gamers and game workers alike." Really? I'm actually surprised that we don't see more AAA games get the same treatment, because there are so many AAA live service failures out there that are still online to this day, even though there are only a couple dozen people playing those games. Like, I know for a fact that Suicide Squad is not profitable for Rocksteady or Warner Bros. With less than 100 people playing on PC. And I'm pretty sure it hasn't been profitable since launch day, but to everyone's surprise, the game is still running its servers to this day. The thing with this is that I'm pretty sure it's actually expected that live service games with poor receptions get shut down quickly. The fact that these games are still up despite literally bleeding money every day is pretty abnormal in my opinion, because what publisher in their right mind would want to keep a live service that's actively losing them money still running? The only argument is that they probably signed a contractual agreement to keep the servers up for at least a year or so. But then that would bring up the question, if there wasn't a contract, would they still keep up the servers? Let's be honest, I don't think so. This writer then goes on to compare Concord with Helldivers 2, saying that the reason Helldivers 2 was so successful was because it already had an established fan base. And while it is true, it isn't really why the game was so successful in the first place, because the vast majority of players have never played the first one before. Most of the people playing Helldivers 2 were brand new to the franchise. So the reason why the game was so successful wasn't because of its already established fan base, which wasn't that big to begin with, it was because the game was really good. The writer then complains that Concord didn't get that much of a marketing push and drew the ire of the quote-unquote anti-woke crowd. Now this just comes off as salty because Concord didn't get received as well as this guy thought it should have, even though in reality, Sony actually spent tens of millions of dollars trying to market this game. It had a whole cinematic trailer, multiple gameplay trailers, a bunch of character reveals, a CGI animated short episode, and it even had a spot on Amazon's upcoming secret level show. This is already way more marketing than what any other AAA game has, but the reason why Concord failed is because it's just simply not a good game. And finally, the writer says that with the death of Concord, it points to a similar mindset within the gaming industry that could kill creativity, reduce jobs, and shutter entire studios. I find this super ironic because Concord was the very definition of bland, generic, mediocre slop they can think of. And this guy's out here saying that the death of Concord is a death of creativity. Bitch, the shits I take in my toilet are more creative than this game. Concord had nothing going for it that other games didn't already do better. But I mean, this guy is right that it'll kill off a lot of jobs and studios alike, because in reality, that's how any industry works. If you put out a bad product or produce bad results, then you'll probably lose your job. And it's no different in the gaming industry. If you make a bad game, especially after people invested hundreds of millions of dollars into it, then you'll most likely lose your job. It happened with Forspoken, it happened with Saints Row Reboot, and it happened with the Immortals of Aveum. Now obviously, not everyone at those studios wanted to make the game that they were making, but it's really hard for me to feel bad for these studios when they do mass layoffs or shut down entirely when they make bad games that no one wanted in the first place. I know it sounds harsh, but that's just how the average consumer operates. Now let's move on to the people on Twitter. How did they respond to Concord's shutdown? Well, some of them are also pretty upset. Actually, it seems like a lot of them are. Hey, I mean, I guess now that the game's officially dead, all the 63 people playing the game have nothing better to do than to just go on Twitter and complain. But some also believe that the end of Concord set a grim precedent for the gaming industry going forward. Really? I think it sets a pretty hopeful one if anything, but let's see what these guys have to say. From a now deleted tweet from the community manager of Palworld, he laments the fact that gamers are so quick to dance on the grave of games that they don't like because developers put in so much hard work into making them, and all that time and effort are gone to waste whenever a game dies. Look, I agree, it does suck that a bunch of time and money was wasted on the development of Concord, but I, as a consumer, owe nothing to these game studios just because they put in a lot of hard work into something. We are not obligated to care about how much time, money, or effort they put into their games, because at the end of the day, if that hard work was going to making a bad product, then what was all that effort for? If I go to a restaurant to eat some food and it tastes like shit, am I supposed to feel bad for the chef because of how long it took him to make the meal? How many years he spent in culinary school? How many ingredients he had to use to make it? No, that's completely ridiculous, because if the end result is bad, then all that effort was gone to waste, and the responsibility of the failure lies with the people involved in its creation. In Concord's case, it's Sony and Firewalk Studios, but mostly Firewalk since they actually created it. So if they end up losing their jobs, then sucks to suck, I guess. You shouldn't have made a painfully uninteresting game despite the overwhelmingly negative feedback. The person then finishes off their tweet with, "Don't delude yourself into thinking this is a win, because at the end of the day, no one wins." Really? Because I see this as an absolute win for gamers. Game studios can no longer just release generic mediocre slop anymore and expect people to just eat it up with a smile on their face. They now have to think about what the general public wants and actually try to make a good game. I know, what a wild concept. Game studios making games for gamers. Who would have thought? And now, in the aftermath of the shutdown, some of the devs are actually saying that they no longer want to work in the games industry, design characters, or even do art anymore. And after the result of what we just saw in Concord, I think it's for the best that they look towards different professions because art doesn't seem to be their calling. And once again, I say to you, Concord, goodbye and good riddance.